Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, good evening, depending on which part of the world you are at this moment. My name is Agnes Stoyanov, and I would like to welcome you to today's webinar on behalf of the National Nursing Assessment Services. Today's webinar is dedicated on the care for nurses and the programs they run to support internationally educated nurses and their integration in the workforce in Canada. Please allow me to present to you Ms. Megan Wankel, the Program Coordinator from Care for Nurses, who will be leading today's webinar. Over to you, Megan.
Oh, I'm speaking myself on mute. Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Agnesa. It's great to be here today, and I appreciate this opportunity to connect with all of you. I'm here to, my name is Megan Wankel. As Agnesa mentioned, I coordinate the pre-arrival program with Care Center for Internationally Educated Nurses. And I'm here to talk to you about some of the supports we are able to provide pre-arrival and post-arrival, and how we support internationally educated nurses back into the workforce in Canada and on towards career success. So as I go through the presentation, please do type your questions into the Q&A. Agnesa has generously agreed to monitor our questions, and we will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So the topics we're going to cover today are Care Center's pre- and post-arrival services and the eligibility to join, what internationally educated nurses new to Canada need, some of the challenges and barriers to workforce integration for internationally educated nurses, how Care Center supports that through our employment workshops, our mentorship programming, and we have a workplace integration program with internationally educated nurses and with employers that can foster successful workforce transition, recommended strategies and proven interventions, and what inclusion means for internationally educated nurses, employers, and the Canadian health sector. And I'm so grateful that all of you are coming to Canada, and we really need you here, and your skills and expertise are very much needed in the health sector. So to tell people a bit about Care Center, we've been around since 2001. We only work with nurses. That is the one and only occupation that we do assist. And we were one of Ontario's first bridge training programs for internationally educated professionals. So for over 20 years, we've been offering post-arrival supports that are specifically for nurses seeking licensure as registered nurses or registered practical nurses in Ontario. And that is now called the STARS program. That's funded by the provincial government of Ontario. Since 2016, we have offered a pre-arrival program called PASS with funding from Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. And I think we have a few PASS folks listening in today, so big welcome. And PASS since 2016 has worked with over 1,600 internationally educated nurses going to every province and territory in Canada. As I mentioned, federally funded by IRCC, PASS is solely pre-arrival. So once nurses land in Canada, a small amount of time is offered so people can wrap up, but they then transition into all of the post-arrival supports that are available in their province of landing. So PASS is pre-arrival. It is only for nurses currently outside of Canada who are planning immigration on a permanent resident or a convention refugee status. So unfortunately, due to our current funding criteria, we are not able to formally assist those coming on work visas or student visas. It is entirely free of charge with proof of graduation from a nursing school or a nursing registration letter or a letter of nursing employment, just proof that one does have a nursing background. And again, the immigration status proof. I didn't mention it on this slide, but there is no minimum language benchmark for joining PASS, although we do recommend a Canadian language benchmark level of, 5 or 6, just to have meaningful participation in the program. So once nurses join PASS, they have access to unlimited case management, as much as one needs and has time for. Supports, navigating the licensure process. We reach out heavily to NNAS for that. And we have a series of information, orientation, and employment webinars that we repeat monthly, just to prepare people for workforce integration and nursing in Canada, getting familiarized with the regulation and scope of practice. We have 2 online English language nursing specific communication courses that participants can go through at their own pace. We have access to mentors through the Canadian Nurses Association across the country for individual and group connections. And we facilitate, of course, all of the referrals and all of the supports and agencies that people will need upon arrival in Canada. We'll make sure you receive the support you need post-arrival after PASS ends. Just to give you an idea of some of the monthly webinar topics that we cover, of course, the first and most important webinar is Jumpstart the Nursing Registration Process, which we refer people back to the NNAS when they're going through that process or wherever they're launching their process. And Nursing in Canada and orientation to the Canadian healthcare system are considered probably our 3 most essential webinars. But we do other webinars, again, designed for workforce familiarization, Canadian labor market, Canadian workplace culture, and that covers, patient-centered care concepts, working with diverse patient populations, cross-cultural communication strategies. A very popular webinar, as people can imagine, is transferable skills and how to leverage all of your skills for accessing non-licensed healthcare employment while you're meeting your regulatory requirements, networking, professional writing skills. These are a regular roster of webinars, but we have access to many diverse professional development sessions every month as well. I mentioned our eligibility already, proof of nursing background and proof of approval to immigrate to Canada on a permanent resident or convention refugee status. And I'll let people review that for a minute. We have a list of the documentation that can be submitted to prove eligibility for the program. So essentially any document that has your UCI, your unique client identifier number. And when people are ready to join PASS, there is a secure online intake form. So for those of you living in Canada, if you are living in Ontario, Care Centre offers post-arrival supports currently only in Ontario, and that is through the STARS program. However, if you are listening in and you are living in another province, feel free to reach out after the webinar, and I will send you a list of supports available in your province. So post-arrival, for nurses pursuing licensure is our STARS program. That stands for Supports, Training, and Access to Regulated Employment Services. And our head office is based in Toronto. We have regional offices, as you can see, throughout Ontario, from Windsor all the way to Kingston. But virtually, we do work with nurses across the province, teleconferencing and Zoom. So in Ontario, we use the same case management tool as offered in PASS. So we do offer that one-on-one, every nurse has an assigned case manager, and we come up with an action plan and we walk nurses, support them through every step throughout their licensure journey. We do a lot of work around nursing workplace language and communication training. We have a great CELBAN instructor. We'll do work around workforce integration, which I'll talk about a bit later in the presentation. For RN applicants, this is an older slide, pardon me, that should say RN cap. So we help prepare people for the OSCE. If nurses are asked to do that assessment, we have NCLEX preparation resources and study groups. For nurses in Ontario seeking registered practical nursing licensure, we offer exam preparation and competency assessment supplement workshops. I'm going to talk in a bit more detail momentarily about our robust mentorship program. We offer a lot of access to nurse mentors in Ontario as well through our observational job shadowing, mentoring program, lots of networking opportunities, and professional development webinars offered monthly. And of course, we're well connected to make sure people's settlement needs are met as well. And we make referrals for the other supports as people integrate into their new homes. The STARS eligibility is a bit wider than the PASS eligibility. So one has to be a Canadian citizen, permanent resident, convention refugee, or a refugee claimant with a work visa. We are also able to support nurses on the Canada-Ukraine authorization immigration stream. And there is a language proficiency requirement that can be met in different ways, whether the regulatory requirement has been met, or we can do an ICELBAN in-house. And nurses can actually join PASS in Ontario whether they have initiated an NNAS application or not. So if you have not yet launched an application, we can help you get started on that. And we try to really, through our holistic case management model, try to cover all of the supports that new nurses in Canada need, pre and post arrival. And there definitely are some challenges that internationally educated nurses are facing towards workforce integration. And we do a lot of work around this at Care Centre, as we have over the decades. The first one, can be the perceived, Canadian experience barrier, and, the discrimination that can be prevalent with employers if they're unwilling or reluctant to hire nurses without the Canadian experience, which we have ways to counter that. And that actually is against the human rights codes. But that can be a barrier that people face. The employment preparation piece, knowing effective job search techniques, where to look for them. We do, as I mentioned, through PASS, a monthly networking skills webinar and one-on-one tailored guidance on how to effectively use LinkedIn. And we offer a lot of networking and professional development opportunities with employers, as I'll talk about. Knowing the Canadian style resume and cover letter techniques and the interview skills, the types of behavioral questions that will be asked, how to effectively prepare for resumes, finding work commensurate with experience. And, just that lack of established network. Our executive director at Care Centre likes to say, Care Centre is your network when you get to Canada, and we will, introduce you to connections and try to open doors. Addressing, the integration and making sure people are familiar with the diverse Canadian healthcare settings. And because some of the most acute needs in Canada are in some of our rural, remote, and northern communities, there can be challenges, exposing people to those settings and what some of working and living in some of these communities can look like. And of course, trying to paint a realistic picture of the upsides and the downsides of working in these settings. Employers not having proper equity, diversity, and inclusion strategies. And housing, of course, a big issue across Canada now. So making sure that the settlement and housing supports are in place. So some of the barriers that people are facing that we are here to help with. We do offer, as I mentioned, pretty extensive employment supports. Pre-arrival, but especially post-arrival through our STARS program in Ontario. But in both programs, we try to help people access regulated nursing positions after they're licensed and non-nursing opportunities that are still health related for people still meeting the regulatory requirements. In the STARS program, we have an employment skills workshop. We help with refining resumes and cover letters, tailoring to job descriptions. We conduct mock interviews with our employer partners. We have human resources staff coming to the agency to conduct mock interviews to help people, gain that additional confidence. Going in interviews are stressful for everybody, but particularly if you're a new Canadian. We provide one-on-one coaching for the resume and interview preparation, as well as in group settings. And we are fortunate in Ontario to have privileged relationships with employer partners in hospital and long-term care settings, community settings. So we can provide direct referrals for job postings and online or in-person recruitment fairs for prioritized hiring. I mentioned we have numerous professional development sessions throughout the year, and they can range from, technical and essential skills, such as wound care, IV therapy, oncology, head-to-toe assessments, many more PD sessions. And we offer meet the employer sessions very frequently, where pre and post-arrival, people can connect with employers, get a better understanding of their workplace culture, the job opportunities being offered, incentives that are in place for internationally educated nurses, and some of those ongoing supports. We have, as I mentioned, a quite robust mentorship program at care centers. So I mentioned that we do pre-arrival connections in PASS. Mentors in our pre-arrival program for nurses going anywhere in Canada will attend our group webinars on a rotating basis. So there's wide-ranging access for participants outside of Canada and PASS who've completed, a lot of our program segments, attended most of our webinars, are offered a one-on-one individualized connection if they have time for 3 to 5 in-person or online virtual meetings or over email. Post-arrival in Ontario, it is quite robust. We have observational job shadowing, where nurses can observe senior and expert nurses in different clinical settings that they could be interested in. We started virtual mentorship over the pandemic, and we've kept it because it's quite popular, especially if people have busy schedules. So they can observe clinical settings for, in-person shifts, and people also have the opportunity to meet with their mentor virtually and get their questions answered. And of course, mentorship has myriad benefits for the internationally educated nurse mentee, but also for the mentor. It's been a really rich and rewarding experience on both sides. And mentors are able to share their education, wisdom, life and career experiences. It enhances communication for internationally educated nurses through meaningful discussions, learning about, interprofessional team settings, patient-client relationships, therapeutic communication techniques. Pre and post-arrival, we guide internationally educated nurses to the Canadian Nurses Association networks, and that's the professional voice of nursing in Canada. And they have some incredible resources and professional development webinars, online certification courses. So we can't tout the benefits of mentorship enough at Care Center, and we really do try to connect people as much as possible. So we have formal arrangements with a variety of healthcare organizations and employers. You can see some of them on the slide, and these are the ones we have formal partnerships with. We also invite a wide-ranging list of employers to meet the employer sessions, so they can, recruit, connect with internationally educated nurses. These are also our partners on this slide for observational job shadowing. So nurses in our STARS program can actually do OJS shifts with these partners. And we have mentors as well from all of these partners, and including through WeRPN, which is the Registered Practical Nurses Association of Ontario, the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, and the Canadian Nurses Association. And, you can see we expose people to acute care settings, long-term care, community nursing, the professional nursing associations as listed on the slide, and the areas of interest that internationally educated nurses can get exposed to can include, documentation. We do webinars on this in PASS as well, but post-arrival, exposing people to how documentation is done in the Canadian setting, medication administration, health and physical assessment, new equipment and how to use technology. I mentioned already the therapeutic communication and interprofessional team roles and responsibilities, which can be new concepts. Sometimes nursing procedures like wound care and IV therapy, telephone orders, receiving, admitting, and discharging patients, how shift reporting is done, the scope of practice, nursing roles in the unit. I could go on, actually. And I see some questions coming in on the Q&A. I am going to encourage people to keep typing your questions, and we look forward to answering them at the end. This is just a snapshot of some of the Meet the Employer sessions that we do monthly. And these are some of the recent ones. And again, this is an opportunity for human resources staff to come and talk about their employers, the culture of the employer, what training and onboarding they have for new hires, any incentives they have in place for internationally educated nurses. Some of these employers are offering some pretty hefty signing bonuses. So it's been a really great opportunity for nurses to connect before and after they're licensed. Sometimes these employers will have non-licensed health positions people can apply for while they're meeting their requirements. And of course, regulated nursing positions as well for after people are licensed. Oh, I'm skipping ahead. Let me go back a bit. I mentioned that we do a lot of workforce integration, both with internationally educated nurses and with employers. And it is important for employers as well to attract and retain internationally educated nurses, to be inclusive workforces, to provide the support that's needed. So for internationally educated nurses, we have webinars that are designed to help foster their successful integration, to strengthen the knowledge, skills, and strategies to quickly integrate into the nursing sector in Ontario. Again, this is our post-arrival STARS only in Ontario program. We're hoping after April 2025, this may go pan-Canadian, but currently this is only in Ontario. And it enables internationally educated nurses to succeed in the interprofessional practice teams, utilizing the patient and family-centered approach. We have case studies, learning activities, and evaluation tools incorporated. This initiative is led by our excellent professional practice lead at Care Center. So the first webinar covers diversity, cultural competence, early transitional issues. So helping IENs develop their own orientation and transition plan, how they can engage in ongoing professional development, how to provide culturally competent care, working with very diverse patient populations. And then the second webinar is on building relational practice with colleagues and patients and families. Providing leadership in everyday practice within the team, and effectively and identifying and managing any conflicts or bullying that could be occurring at the workplace. And language is a real and perceived barrier. So that is for nurses, but we do a lot of work with employers. And in fact, we were given some money recently by the province of Ontario. Over a 2-month period, I think we trained around 65 employers across Ontario. And the goal of the workplace integration for employers is to help them be inclusive workplaces and facilitate a smooth transition and successful integration of nurses into their workforce. So we have targeted these modules for human resources, nurse managers, educators, and staff. It's a train the trainer approach. And again, same thing, diverse learning activities, case studies, and an evaluation tool are incorporated into these modules. And the first webinar is helping employers develop a strong orientation and transition plan for internationally educated nurses. Letting them know why a diverse workplace matters. Employers are so lucky to be getting the skills and knowledge of internationally educated nurses. And, you know, they need to recognize the importance of that, reducing bias in the selection process, considerations for the interview process for interviewing IENs. We even include a cross-cultural interview guideline. And then our second webinar covers the benefits, again, of workplace diversity and inclusion, approaches for creating an inclusive and supportive work environment for nurses, strategies to improve IEN integration and retention within the team. And it's been a very popular training since we started offering it, and we continue to offer this important workshop in Ontario. And we do have recommended strategies for the successful inclusion of internationally educated nurses. And this is an article I'm happy to share with anybody interested. I can send that Agnes as a follow-up. And our executive director at Care Center, along with our professional practice lead, submitted this to the Journal of Nursing Leadership, and it's their recommendations for successful workforce inclusion. The first one is to establish partnerships, and this is what employers should be doing with settlement agencies, crucially important. They provide really valuable services as people integrate into their new homes and societies. So forming these partnerships with settlement agencies, and that will help internationally educated nurses settle into their community and sustain employment. Another strategy is to increase the understanding of any cultural influences that may impact communication styles. I know with our work with nurses through Care Center, people have reported they've maybe been more accustomed to working in more hierarchical workplaces, where nurses maybe weren't typically encouraged to take such a strong leadership role or speak out. So trying to help employers recognize that could be, you know, that could be an issue impacting communication. Supporting internationally educated nurses and staff to adopt the best interpersonal and communication practices. And crucially, and we continually advocate for this with employers, recognize the rich past experience of internationally educated nurses. These are highly experienced nurses that employers are so lucky to get and should not be starting at entry-level salaries. So we need to continue advocating for fairness, so experienced IENs can get fair compensation. And then helping employers investigate if internationally educated nurses are getting screened out, why this is happening by human resources staff. And, you know, we help employers to prepare to welcome and effectively integrate internationally educated nurses. Of course, firstly, providing organizational education to the team on the rich and vast linguistic capabilities and clinical knowledge of internationally educated nurses that they're bringing to the team. Providing a formal introduction to staff is helpful, including relating the experience and the expertise that people are bringing with them. And again, just touting the benefits of mentorship, hugely, hugely important. And ensuring that internationally educated nurses, do have a strong buddy, a preceptor, mentorship support during their first days on the job and through the orientation. And some, you know, recognizing sometimes multiculturalism and working with such a diverse patient population could be new concepts. I hear that a lot in PASS and in our STARS program for nurses who've gone through our programming, saying this is the first time we're working with, you know, such a diverse patient population. Enhancing conflict resolution skills is important for engagement in conversations about client care and situations involving colleagues as well, and providing individualized orientation plans. And for folks working in Ontario, there is a nursing graduate guarantee, and that allows for a longer orientation time, which is fantastic. And collaborating with healthcare organizations, academic institutions, regulators, professional associations, settlement agencies, bridging programs, internationally educated nurse support programs like Care Center. And that does help support IEN's integration. And we have a province-wide membership at Care Center just in Ontario of over 5,000 nurses. And we really have built up that network with employers. And a lot of nurses who've gone through our Care Center programming are in high up in HR and managerial positions. So we do a lot of work across Ontario with the nurses we work with and with employers to have inclusive hiring and integration practices. And then conducting organizational assessments. Healthcare employers need to have transparent organizational assessments of hiring and integration practices in collaboration with human resources. Recognizing and rewarding nurses with financial and educational incentives. And because of our labor market shortages and especially internationally educated nurses are very sought after. And we have seen some very generous compensation packages and hiring bonuses, which is fantastic. And then organizations need to have a strong commitment to diversity, willing to engage in comprehensive, multifaceted cultural education that does focus on attracting and retaining internationally educated nurses. And I think this is our final slide, actually, and we'll have lots of time for Q&A. But again, I just want to reiterate, so grateful everybody's coming here, and our nursing workforce needs you so badly. And internationally educated nurses play a huge and important role in filling staffing shortages and building workforce capacity in specialized nursing settings, intensive care, pediatrics, geriatrics, long-term care and community care are the fastest growing sectors in Canada. So we do a lot of work exposing people to these settings as well. And yeah, gaining increased insight in clinical settings and career options is really important. So, you know, we try to help people do that. And, you know, that confidence and security we want to build up going into a new healthcare setting. We want people to have a greater sense of social inclusion and cultural awareness, enhanced communication, stronger leadership capacities, expanded professional networks. And employers, as I mentioned, are so lucky to be getting IENs in their employ. And, you know, it's really great for the workforce when they are able to attract and retain and utilize all of the skills of internationally educated nurses. Employers, of course, need to ensure ethical recruitment. They need to incorporate equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives into their diverse workforce. It's such a huge benefit to the workforce to have this injection of talent. We need to ensure that there is full contribution of internationally educated nurses into the Canadian health sector. Whatever province you are going to or have landed in, there are some great post-arrival supports available and growing. There are 3 new initiatives across the country that have just come on my radar. You know, so we do encourage people as soon as they land in Canada to transition immediately into all of the robust post-arrival supports that are available for you, including connecting with the provincial internationally educated nurse navigators and all of the support programs for nurses. And just to end on the note that the journey of internationally educated nurses does not end at registration. I know the regulatory steps can be complex and can take some time. And you know, I know sometimes people think, well, now I'm licensed, you know, the journey's over, but it's really not. It does not end at registration and the first Canadian employment. We are here to support the long-term integration of internationally educated nurses, your ongoing continuing development, your future thriving in your career, becoming nurse leaders in Canada. And we're here to support that as best we can at Care Centre. So I want to thank the NNAS team. Thank you, Kyle, Agnesa, and Jennifer. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with everybody listening in, whether you're in Canada or overseas. Please do reach out with any questions. And we have the link to our website is on this slide. It's carefornurses.org. And once you go on that website, you'll see a STARS box and a PASS box. So you can see the pre and post-arrival in Ontario programming. And I'm happy to share this slide deck. As I've mentioned, I can make this available to the organizers afterwards if anybody is interested in reviewing the content. And thank you again, Agnesa.
You are very welcome, Megan. We do have some questions, and mostly they are around eligibility for the program or for other aspects related to becoming a nurse in Canada, which I believe together we can answer.
Great.
I will read them in the order in which they were received. The first question is, I wrote my NCLEX exam in India and passed. Am I eligible for this process, or do I have to start all over again? By this process, I assume they mean the PASS program.
Okay, so I can answer that. So if you're talking about launching your nursing assessment process, you can Agnesa can answer that question. But yes, PASS is actually nothing to do with the credentialing assessment process. We're just here to support you on the journey. So congratulations, first of all, on passing your NCLEX. That's wonderful. So you can join PASS if you are still outside of Canada and you have been approved to migrate to Canada on a permanent resident status. And then you'll have access to, all of the supports. I covered, some of the case management and webinars that we talked about to help you become familiar with nursing in Canada, prepare for workforce integration, improve your Canadian language skills. If you are talking about your credentialing assessment process and gaining your nursing registration in Canada, PASS has nothing to do with that. You would be contacting the National Nursing Assessment Service about that. And the starting point is opening a file with the NNAS.
Passing the NCLEX exam is one step that you have completed, which will actually count towards the registration. It is later in the process when you are already assessed and you are applying for registration with a particular Canadian regulator. Passing the NCLEX exam is a mandatory step for everybody who is applying to get registered in Canada as a registered nurse. So it will be having passed the exam is one of the steps you have completed, but you will have to do all the other steps of the process, the immigration process to Canada, the assessment process that will lead to applying to registration in Canada, etc. So in a way, it cannot neither help nor hurt your process. It will help you, but later when you're applying for registration with the Canadian regulator, because you will not have to write the exam again. And the second question is actually almost the same around eligibility. I do believe you already talked about it, Megan, but let's just reiterate because it's so important to everybody.
Yeah, that's such an important question.
I have a work visa for Canada. Am I eligible for the PASS and CARE program?
Yeah, thank you for asking that again. Unfortunately, no. We are restricted by our federal funder to only working with people coming on convention refugee or permanent resident statuses. However, I don't want that to sound too discouraging. Anybody listening in on a work visa, please do email me. I'm still happy to at least set up one meeting. Even if you can't formally join PASS, I'm happy to connect with you and give you some initial guidance. And you can keep me posted when you are a permanent resident, whether that is pre-arrival if you do get PR status, or post-arrival, even if it's after you've landed in Canada. You can keep me posted and when you do receive that, and I can send you a list of supports. But no, unfortunately, to join PASS, we do have the restriction of only working with permanent residents or convention refugees. So anybody coming on a student visa, a work visa, or a visitor visa is not eligible to join.
And I believe through this you also answered the third question. If I have Canadian citizenship, but I studied nursing and I'm working as a registered nurse in Hong Kong, is the proof of nursing background the only requirement to join PASS?
Yeah, so if there are any Canadian citizens listening in who are IENs and wanting to come back, you can join PASS. Just upload proof of your citizenship on our secure online intake form, along with your proof of nursing background. So you can join PASS as a Canadian citizen.
And a more general question, which I also believe you touched upon, actually the whole presentation was about it. For internationally educated nurses, please explain how can CARE help or assist candidates yet to get into the system, including the NNAS application process, the WES assessment, the step-by-step approach to yield a successful migration to Canada.
Yeah, I think I did touch upon that in our pre and post arrival supports. So first of all, you will need to launch the NNAS application yourself. And fortunately, the NNAS has great customer service and excellent navigators that can help you through that process. But we offer one-on-one case management as well when you want to, talk to me about, what you're going through and the steps in the process. If it's any questions you have particular to your assessment, I will refer you back to the NNAS. They're the only people who can advise you on your assessment. But as you're going through the assessment process, I'd actually encourage you to review the slide deck again. So we have our pre-arrival PASS program you can access outside of Canada, which offers, case management, online communication skills, webinars on specific nursing topics, clinical professional development webinars. We have access to our STARS program, Meet the Employer sessions. That's also open to pre-arrival. Post-arrival in Ontario, again, I think I tried to cover all of the services as best we can. We've got supports to help you meet the licensure requirements, including studying for the licensure exams, or if you're asked to do additional assessments for your RN or practical nursing assessments. We do a lot of work with employers. I mentioned the preparatory work we do to help people access non-licensed and regulated nursing employment, as well as the privileged hiring relationships we have with employers. We always ask care center members to note that they're care center members on their cover letters because they do get prioritized privileged access to be called for interviews. We do Meet the Employer sessions, so lots of employer engagement, and we have a very good mentorship program with observational job shadowing and opportunities to connect with virtual mentors as well. So definitely go back and review the slides, and I hope it gives an overview of the supports that we do provide.
The next question, I believe, is in my area of expertise. Madam, I'm also curious if I can endorse my USRN license for New York here in Canada, or do I need to take another NCLEX exam again? If you already passed the NCLEX exam, most likely you will not have to take it again, especially if you took and passed the exam on or after April 13, 2013, which is very likely your case. But that does not mean that you can endorse your US registered nurse license for practice in Canada. There is no endorsement process. Canada and the US do not have a mutual agreement for recognition of registered nurse qualifications. What this means is that all nurses that are registered for practice in the US need to go through the Canadian processes to become a nurse in Canada, and vice versa. Canadian trained nurses need to be assessed for practice in the US. They do write the very same exam, the NCLEX exam, which means that this step is recognized. You will not need to take the exam again. However, you will need to submit an application and be assessed as a new applicant applying for practice in Canada. Now, since you have said that you have a license for practice in New York, US, there are provinces which can assist you in a different pathway because you hold a license for US. So it may be faster. The process may be faster and have less steps for you. And in order to understand if the province where you wish to practice has such a process, a little bit different and easier for US registered nurses, you would need to contact the regulator in the specific Canadian province where you wish to get registered as a registered nurse. Or even if you just go on their website. For example, let's say you want to practice in Nova Scotia. If you go to the website of the regulator for registered nurses in Nova Scotia, you will be able to see all the pathways they offer for internationally educated nurses. And you will see if US is on a list of countries for which there is a different process for registration that will enable you just to go through this process easier with less documents or in a shorter time. But you do need to apply as a new applicant for Canada. It's not an endorsement. You have a license for US, you can come automatically and practice in Canada. It is not like that. And since that same person also asked if they can practice on a visitor visa in Canada, the answer is no, you cannot. You cannot work in Canada on a visitor visa in any profession, not just nursing. You would need to apply for immigration to Canada and get a permanent resident status. So the Canadian employers have the right to make you a job offer. The other option is holding a work permit, but that is not a simpler option, actually, because in order to get a work permit, you would need a job offer from a Canadian employer for a full-time job. And since Canadian employers do not have the right to make a job offer to somebody who has a visitor visa, the employer would need to advertise the job for minimum 30 days. And if after 30 days, the Canadian employer has received 0 application from any other Canadian citizens or permanent residents, if the employer wants to go that way, they can start up an approval process with the federal government of Canada. The agency is called Employment and Skills Development Canada, where they will need to apply for an approval to hire a foreigner who does not have the right to work legally in Canada. So this, in my experience, I have seen it happen only when the employers need to hire for highly specialized jobs for which they cannot get candidates in any other way. So they need to go and recruit from outside. Or sometimes certain employers do it, but not for one person only, for a group of people. Say, for example, the government of one particular province decides that they want to hire 300 nurses from a particular country. Then they start this process, get the approval to hire foreigners, and go and recruit from that country. So since you have a visitor's visa in Canada, the first step for you would be to apply for immigration to Canada. And once you have the permanent resident status, you can go and apply for registration with a Canadian regulator on the basis of your US license, but not as a visitor. The next question, a little bit more specific, is what types of housing and social costs are covered?
Yeah,
I believe they mean through the CARE program.
Oh, so through Care Center, no, unfortunately, I wish we were able to do that. The pre and post arrival, all of the services I've talked about in the session, that's all that we offer. We do have guidance that we can impart and connections to settlement agencies that will help with housing. Naomi, if you want to email me about that after the presentation and let me know what province you're going to, I can send you some information on the housing guidance that's imparted. If you're talking about what types of housing and social costs may be covered by employers, that is sometimes an incentive if you are willing to move to a rural or remote part of Canada. And so contingent upon the employer, there may actually be some relocation expenses covered, and there may be some housing covered. So that's when we do our Meet the Employer sessions, actually, we've done them with some employers in rural communities. and remote communities and northern communities. And in those cases, there actually could be some housing and social costs covered, contingent upon the employer. In terms of through the funded programs, the government funded programs that support newcomer integration and nurses, there's generally not any housing or social costs covered, unfortunately. Thanks for that great question.
The next question is IELTS requirement? I believe they mean IELTS, the test of English as a foreign language. You touched upon that, right, Megan, about the different ways in which you can meet the language requirements?
Yeah, IELTS, CELBAN. If you're seeking licensure in Ontario, there's additional evidence that you can submit if you've worked or studied in English in previous clinical roles. But yes, the IELTS is one of the language exams that the nursing regulators will accept.
The next question is, are the support only available in Ontario? Is there any difference compared to those in Vancouver?
Yeah, great
Furthermore,
question.
how can I...
Oh, sorry, I didn't see the rest of that. Sorry.
There was a second part of the question. Furthermore, how can I join the webinars?
Yeah, great questions. So pre-arrival, the supports are available as long as you're outside of Canada, or as long as you've joined the PASS program from outside of Canada. You can have a couple months after you land to wrap up, but you pretty quickly immediately need to transition into the post-arrival supports. So pre-arrival, it's pan-Canadian for nurses going anywhere in Canada. Post-arrival through our STARS program, we are currently only available in Ontario. You've asked about Vancouver. There are some great post-arrival supports in Vancouver, in British Columbia, for internationally educated nurses. You've got your internationally educated nurse navigators with the province. So you'll need to connect with them. And then Douglas College is the post-arrival internationally educated nurse support in British Columbia. And they have some great support, similar to what Care Centre does in Ontario post-arrival. There are supports in British Columbia as well. And if you wanted to email me after the presentation, I'll send you the full list. They have the same funding criteria as Care Centre. So you do need to be a permanent resident, convention refugee, or citizen to access the post-arrival supports in BC. I'm happy to share that information. The next question, how can I join the webinars? So to have access to the webinars offered through PASS, you have to be enrolled in the PASS program. If you go to the Care Centre website and click on PASS, it'll bring you to our secure online intake form. You will be asked to upload proof of nursing background and proof of immigration on a PR status. So you do have to be enrolled in PASS to have access to those webinars, to have access to all of the post-arrival supports in the STARS program. You have to be physically living in Ontario, and you have to meet the eligibility criteria, which I covered earlier on the slide deck. So citizen, convention refugee, refugee claimant with a work visa, or the Ukraine authorization stream, the quiet stream. And actually, I'm glad, before we go on to the next question, tomorrow, July 4th, my colleagues would be very upset if I forgot to mention this to the group. The STARS program is actually doing an information session. I believe it's from 1 to 2:30. So if you go onto our website, or you can email me after the presentation, and I'll send you the link where you can register for our information session. One of my colleagues is going to be talking in greater detail about the post-arrival supports offered in Ontario. Sorry about that, Agnesa. Go ahead with the next question.
No, that's okay. They're very much around the same topics, but it's good to reiterate.
Absolutely.
Hello,
yeah.
Please, do you offer any pre-arrival services for internationally educated nurses in their home country, such as preparation for the NCLEX exam or assisting with the visa application?
So we have nothing to do with immigration, and we're not allowed to, we're not even legally allowed to discuss immigration because we don't want to be perceived as, poaching from other countries. So nurses themselves have had to have gone through the immigration process and gained approval for PR, and that's when they can come to us. But yes, the pre-arrival PASS program is for internationally educated nurses in their home countries. You cannot join PASS once you are in Canada. It is a pre-arrival program, so it has to be accessed before you get here. There's a little bit of time you can wrap up if you've joined PASS and you're coming to Canada very quickly. Maybe you only have a couple weeks. The government has said you can wrap up. You can, take the time, a couple months max that you need. If you need some time to wrap up the services to get the full advantages of the program, but really PASS pre-arrival, it can only be accessed from outside of Canada. And we do have preparation for NCLEX. We have some resources I can share with you pre-arrival. We have a great study guide our professional practice lead compiled. Post-arrival in Ontario, we have even more supports to help prepare for the licensure exam.
That is wonderful, Megan. The next question, very specific but very interesting. Can you talk about any job opportunities for internationally educated nurses while they are still in the licensing process?
So glad you asked that. Agnes and I were just talking about that question before we logged on to the presentation. Yes, a common one is a personal support worker or healthcare aide, patient care aide. In some provinces that may require additional licensure or certification, which we always discourage. Do not get any additional certifications for non-licensed jobs you may need. We don't want people wasting time or energy on anything other than, pursuing the nursing goals. But I know in Ontario, PSW is a common one. That's personal support worker. And many employers in Ontario, especially the ones connected with Care Centre, are willing to waive that requirement if they know you're an internationally educated nurse pursuing licensure. Other job opportunities are, medical file administration, medical office assistant. Sometimes that requires certification, sometimes it doesn't. It will specify in the job description. Public health teaching is another one. Some of those positions are non-regulated. If you're looking at, working for a nonprofit or social service agency, doing program management in the health sector. A number of nurses who've gone through the PASS program have worked on research initiatives with, the province or the federal government. So research is one that you can use your nursing background, but there's sometimes non-regulated positions. First aid and safety officer on a construction site is another one. So there are nurses, especially, as such a highly skilled occupation, and often nurses are like, so accustomed to just focusing on the clinical work that they do, but nurses have so many transferable skills and so many soft skills that can relate to so many other jobs. There's a lot to consider while you're pursuing licensure. There are jobs where you can still stay connected to the health sector. And actually once a month in the PASS program, we do a transferable skills for pre-registration employment. So we actually have developed a whole webinar around this topic in PASS, and we do one-on-one assistance applying for positions of interest as well. Post-arrival in Ontario, same thing. We help link people up with these positions while they're pursuing licensure. So yeah, lots of job opportunities pre-registration.
That is actually very good to hear about all these options. Another question on practice, but a little different. Can you practice as a nurse on a study visa? So student visa is in some aspects similar to a visitor visa, but also very different, because on a visitor visa, you cannot work, period, in any profession, anywhere. On a student visa, if you're a student in Canada already, you must have actually checked the working hours allowed and the conditions under which you are allowed to work on a student visa. As far as my knowledge goes, you are allowed a small number of hours of working on a student visa. I believe it was around 18 hours a week or so, but I really wouldn't like to speak by heart. I would strongly encourage you to go on the website of IRCC, which is the former Citizenship and Immigration Canada, and check under student visa. You will see all the conditions for practice, how many hours, where you can practice, and under what what requirements you need to meet for that purpose, because there may be conditions that you can practice only on the campus of the university or sometimes outside the campus. So please check the requirements for practice on student visa directly on the website of IRCC. Another person is asking, is NCLEX mandatory for enrollment of nursing program in Canada? I believe there may be a little confusion about what a nursing program is. A nursing program is when you go to college or university to study nursing, to be a nurse in Canada. This is not when you are taking the NCLEX exam. The NCLEX exam is after you have graduated as a nurse from a Canadian or international program. So after you have successfully completed a nursing program in Canada or outside of Canada, this is when you can seek permission to gain eligibility to sit the NCLEX exam, and it is mandatory for everybody who is considering to be a registered nurse in Canada. So whether you studied in Canada or outside of Canada, if you will be applying to be a registered nurse in Canada, you will need to write and successfully pass the NCLEX exam. Another person is asking, what is the IELTS requirement for each skill? But we also have a more specific question asking, what are the IELTS scores required to work in Ontario? I Googled that as we speak to see what the CNO, the College of Nurses in Ontario, are asking for. So I can quote those, but there might be a difference from one province to another. For Ontario, the College of Nurses of Ontario is asking for a total of 7 at the IELTS exam, with a minimum 6.5 in writing, a minimum of 7 in speaking, a minimum of 7 in listening, and a minimum of 6.5 in reading, or a total of 7. Megan, do you have any specific IELTS requirements for joining the Care for Nurses programs?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So for PASS, there is no language requirement. For our post-arrival STARS program, there is, and I can't remember it off the top of my head. Let's go on to the next question and I'll look that up. But yeah, there is a minimum language requirement to join STARS. And it was set by the province of Ontario. But the good thing is if people have not done a language assessment yet, we actually do it in-house. So when people join PASS, they get a free ISEL ban. And if the language benchmarks are a bit low, we have recommendations and programs. We can refer people into where they can beef up the language to the minimum language requirement. So I'm going to look that up right now, but it is lower than the CNO. We do not, I recall that we do not have the same language benchmarks as the nursing regulator. And actually, I encourage the person who asked that question, sign up for the online information session tomorrow, where they're going to cover all of the STARS program in greater detail and all of the eligibility requirements.
Do I need to start the NNAS application process before I apply for PASS?
No, I'm so glad you asked that question. You do not need to have launched your assessment. You can join PASS as long as you have a nursing background. And rarely, but we even have nurses joining PASS who maybe haven't worked in 10 or 15 years and are not even planning on reestablishing their nursing career in Canada. Unfortunately, that's rare because we need people as nurses, but even those folks can join PASS as long as you have a nursing background, and I can help people in that case apply for alternative health careers that they're interested in if they're looking at other pathways. Yeah, so that's a great question. No, the only thing you need to join PASS, no minimum language requirement, although we do recommend, again, a Canadian language benchmark of 5 or 6, just so the program's meaningful. If people do join the program with insufficient language proficiency, I have resources. Our CELBAN instructor has resources to share with people that can help people beef up the language. But to have meaningful participation in PASS. There does need to be, you know, a fairly high language proficiency, but no minimum requirement. All you need is proof of a nursing background, whatever that looks like, a nursing registration, a nursing transcript, a nursing letter of employment, a diploma, your degree, and then the proof of immigration is the big one. So I'm actually going to stop. I'm still sharing my screen.
Megan, we have one more question, if I
Oh,
can
sure.
afford, but very different from the other questions.
Sure.
It's from a small recruitment and immigration company.
Oh, yes,
or
I
this
think
is
I
what
saw
they
that.
say.
Yeah.
We are contact a small recruitment and immigration company based in rural Ontario. Do you partner with staffing agency like ours?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. Legally, we're not allowed to. So we don't partner with any immigration agencies or staffing agencies because it's the federally funded, government funded programs are not allowed to partner with anyone that's also not a nonprofit, even though I notice your services are free of charge as well. But what I can do, even though we're not allowed to partner formally, is for agencies like Contact, if you are working with, you know, a larger group of nurses and you want information, I am allowed to facilitate an information session on our pre and post arrival programs to cover the eligibility. So Alexandra, do reach out to me afterwards if you would like a general information session, but that's about all we're allowed to do. We're not allowed to engage in any formal partnerships.
Thank you, Megan. And
Yeah,
you
thank
just
you for that
answered all
question.
of our submitted questions. Thank you very much for your patience.
Oh, my pleasure. And I'm sorry, I was going to stop the screen share and look up the language benchmarks required for Care Center, but it might be more time efficient if I just send you the answer, and we can let people know afterwards. So when I send out the slide deck and our agency flyers, I can make a note that this is what's required. But we do encourage people, even if they haven't, if they're in Ontario and they meet the eligibility criteria, go ahead and join, because we can do an in-house language assessment after you join.
And for those of you who are thinking of starting their NNAS assessment process or have already started it, we have recorded webinars on our website that walk you in big detail through the assessment process, but also offer an overview of the nursing professions in Canada, the regulatory bodies, the differences for starting the process, some tips and strategies for completing the process as smooth and successfully as possible. Those are available under resources on the NNAS website, and there are recorded webinars in both English and French that you can access on your own time, whenever is the best option for you to listen to those, in the evening, on the weekend. Since they are recorded, you can access them whenever it is best for you.
Mm-hmm. And actually, Agnesa, if it's all right, I'm just going to put in the chat for folks in Ontario who want to learn more about our post-arrival Ontario program. Just putting in the chat the link to sign up for the information session. And then they will cover in greater detail the eligibility criteria. And in greater detail, I gave kind of a brief overview of the supports Care Center provides through our post-arrival program, but they'll talk about it in a bit more detail.
And that should be available on your website, right, Megan?
It is, yeah. Yeah, so I put the direct link as well, but yeah, if you go to our website and click on stars, it'll list all of the sessions we have coming up. Listed right before the info session is an RNCAP session that we have coming up, but the info session's right under that.
Thank you, Megan. This is a wealth of information, even for me. This was very informative. Thank you for being here with us today. And
I really appreciate the opportunity.
In detail about the programs run by Care for Nurses. And since we don't have any more questions with this, we will conclude today's webinar. Feel free to reach out to Megan or myself with more questions for information services. We are here to help and happy to assist. Once again, thank you everybody who was able to be here today. We hope the session was helpful. And as we mentioned, we are happy to answer any further questions by email or in future sessions. Thank you. I wish everybody a wonderful day.
Thank you.